What's up, Brooke? Thanks for joining me. I appreciate it. I believe you're a fellow East Coaster. I think you're from New York from my research.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm from New York, an hour and a half north of the city.
That's beautiful
Yeah.
area.
Oh yeah, I love it. It's really nice, got the balance of like the country, but the city is only about an hour away. So if I want to go for the day, it's super close. Fun
Yeah,
day trip.
that's a great spot. For anyone that's not from our area, they think New York, they probably think like city and like dirty, but like New York is so gorgeous. Like there's some amazing like snowboarding up there, rock climbing, hiking, and waterfalls. It's like amazing. And especially this time of year with all the snow, it's awesome. I think I read
Yeah.
somewhere that you are a snowboarder as well. Is that true?
Yes, I have been snowboarding since I was like 5 years old. I don't do it as much anymore just because, you know, get scared that I'm gonna get hurt and then I can't play drums.
Yeah. The whole breaking your wrist thing is bad for your career, right?
Yeah, kind of can't play drums if I have a broken wrist.
I I
But
snowboard with wrist guards. You might want to look into that if you don't have them yet. They make a lot
yeah,
of wrist guards built in.
I have the mittens that have like the pieces of
Yeah.
plastic
Yeah,
for the
yeah.
wrist stuff. So I do have those, but still, you never know.
That's
So
true. I went out last week and it was awesome. We had some really sick snow out here. It was great.
oh,
So
that's awesome. Where do you guys go?
so we go to Camelback in the Poconos. My
Okay, yeah.
my in-laws have a house there, and my little kids all ski and snowboard. So it was just super fun. And I went up a week or two ago with my twin boys, and they're only 8, but they're like little shredders already. So it's super fun.
That's awesome. Love it.
Speaking of little kids, I did some Brooke research, and I saw some cool things I want to ask you about. So you had described in an interview that I read that I think you were 5 or 6 when you went to a friend's birthday party, and that's sort of when you'd like discovered music. It was sort of like a music themed party, and I'm wondering if you can bring us back to that moment because I think those early moments are really cool. And plus, I have 3 little kids that are all studying music, so I want to like hear about it, what it was like from your perspective as a little girl, if you remember that clearly enough.
Yeah. It was like you said, it was a friend's birthday party and they had musicians come with instruments and each kid at the party got to try the instruments.
Mhm.
So I sat behind the kit and just fell in love. Um But yeah, like growing up, my parents, I went home and asking for a drum set. And luckily they were super supportive. And so for Christmas that year, got a drum set and they signed me up for lessons. Started learning right away. Um, and yeah, I just always, I think when I was a little kid, I just always loved it so much. So I always wanted to learn as much as I could about drums, different styles, different grooves, and all of that, different types of music. So, yeah, definitely always been super passionate about it from day one.
But like before you got into like learning the grooves and learning the theory and all that, when you're a little kid, you're definitely not a 5-year-old thinking, I want to learn theory. Like you're probably thinking like this sounds cool or whatever. What was what was it what was the moment? Like what was the feeling when you were super little when you were just was it like the because I'm trying to like experience it now. My twin boys are learning drums and we got a kit for them and now I'm trying to learn a little bit, but I love seeing it in their eyes, like the excitement, and I'm starting to see them get more comfortable and their heads are starting to bop around and I'm like, all right, you're starting to feel it. Was it just the idea of like, wow, I'm making this sound, like I'm doing this? Was it like, oh, it's this sounds like music my parents are playing? What was it about that before it got to like learning the grooves and learning the specifics?
Yeah, it was definitely listening to other bands and then kind of looking up to them and feeling like, oh, I want to do that one day. And, watching videos from live shows and like, oh, I want to do that. Like just that feeling and urge and want to do something like that. So definitely that inspired me a lot when I was a little kid. Um, and just, yeah, loving music and listening to it all the time. That I would say, you know, was what inspired me and just more of like the feeling, I guess, was I guess like satisfaction when you learn a song that you love so much and you watch your favorite artist play and it's like, oh my gosh, like I'm playing along to them too. And just yeah, I would say.
That's really cool. So you've gotten your career to this point already where it's really wild. Like I stumbled upon you like so many other people have. Like you see this chick playing crazy drums and I'm like, how the hell is she doing that? And I started following you and you have these crazy chops and you have this wild following. You have like over 300,000 people on YouTube and Instagram. When you are doing your social media content, when you're putting stuff out there, is that a conscious thought in your head? Like, I'm basically playing for 300,000 people right now, or is it totally removed in your head and you're more in like the business Brooke brain at that time? Like, how does that play out in your head?
Definitely, I do think about it when I am like recording and making a video, like, oh, like kind of just you never know who's gonna see this essentially. And like, I do have a following and what are they gonna think and all that sort of stuff. Are my followers gonna like what I'm playing and all that sort of stuff? I do think about that. Um, but normally what's going through my head is just I try to make sure that I'm not playing something or just doing a video just to please other people. I really try to make sure that what I'm recording and what I'm playing to, I enjoy myself. Because I do think that that translate through camera and stuff. If somebody can tell, like you can tell when somebody's playing something that they love, you know?
Mm.
So to answer your question, I definitely do think about it. Um, and like my following and stuff when I am recording and playing, but I try not to get too, like, into it.
I found this great quote from you from another interview. You said, "What makes a musician stand out is how well of a not how well of a player they are, but how fluid they are playing." And I was wondering if you can go in deeper with that. What makes a player fluid? Is that something that can be learned? Is it just like something kind of a soul? Is it something that all musicians share? Do you feel like it's different for drummers? Like, what makes a player fluid to you?
I definitely think part of it is, like what you said, comes from the soul and just somebody's natural feel and timing. But I definitely do think that part of it can also be learned. Um, but really what makes a musician fluid, I say, is just you can tell that they're comfortable behind their instrument and playing. And you could tell that they put in the work and the time to, work on their chops and get comfortable, like I said, with their instrument, I would say, with the fluidity.
I'm more of a even though I love to play music, I play guitar and I play some instruments as a hobbyist. I'm a professional painter. I'm an artist, and so for me, when I think of that, I think there's a similarity. And for me, when I go to like a museum, let's say, and I see like one of the old masters, I'll go to like the Met or something, and I'll stare at the painting, and it's almost like there's almost like not mistakes, but there's like a comfort to be loose. There's a comfort between the gestures. So in drumming, I guess there's like a comfort between each hit that I think does it have. I'm just guessing here. Is the fluidity that you're feeling, the soul that you feel as a drummer, is that similar to me as a painter, where like not it's not so mechanical. It's more like there's a willingness to sort of let the mistakes or let the freedom kind of just hang out as long as it doesn't interfere with the overall macro of the song or the painting. I don't know if I'm expressing that question correctly, but you know what I'm trying to ask?
Yeah, no, I definitely think art and music are super comparable in that way, like with the fluidity. And, I want to say too, I love your artwork, by the way. It's
Oh, thank
really,
you.
really awesome.
Thank you.
Um, but yeah, no, I definitely think that you could definitely compare the with fluidity. Um, And yeah, just expressing yourself freely as well when it comes to fluidity. I'm sure like with painting, like not getting so caught up. Like if you make like one little mistake, just go with it and like see what you can make of that mistake.
Mhm.
Same thing with music, just playing the kit and just taking what you're feeling and making it audible.
Yeah. There's such a beauty in being willing as a creative person to let the humanity in your work show. And I love listening to like acoustic songs, and you hear the scratching on the strings, or you hear a drummer play, and it's so much different. Like a drum machine to a drummer, it's like a drum machine is so mechanical. It's like point A, point B, point A, point B, and then with an actual drummer, there's like nuance in like the micro pressure that you hear, like the way the sticks like pop. Like there's something that can't even be explained, and if you listen to it, it's almost like I don't know. It kind of just sounds like it's getting hit, but there's something about it that there's like the magic in there. I'm wondering, speaking of that, I wanted to ask you this because I have a lot of professional musician friends, and I've asked this question. We've talked about it, and it's a theme that's kind of become like almost comical to think about or talk about with my musician friends, because I'll go to a concert or I'll be backstage with one of my friends and we're listening to it, and half of my musician friends can still tap into the magic that they felt when they were little kids or when they first heard that as a teen. And then the other half of my musician friends are sitting there dissecting everything the person is doing on stage, looking at their what they're doing on stage with their presence, how they're addressing the audience, what they're wearing, the timing, like they're picking it all apart and they're dissecting it. And I don't
Mhm.
know if those are mutually exclusive. I don't know if everyone has both sides mixed up, or if one musician has one the other. Where do you fall into that? Like when you go see a band that you are super stoked on, are you sitting there like picking it apart, like, oh, what are they doing? Or are you like more like just in the moment?
It definitely depends. I find myself to be more of the I wanna sit there and listen to the music and dissect it and see what they're doing. Like, I've seen Tool twice now, one of my all-time favorite
Oh, good.
bands.
I've seen them too. Yeah.
They're amazing, and that for me is one of those shows that, like, I just love Danny Carey's drumming so much, I just wanna sit there and dissect it,
What's he
you know?
doing?
Yeah, literally. Just, like, looking at his kit too, like, what is he using, all of that, 'cause he has, like, an insane kit. Um, but, obviously, there are times too where I'll go to a concert with my friends and, it's not so much one of the bands that you wanna sit and dissect, you just wanna, like, dance and have a great time. So, I definitely there's definitely I have both sides. It just kinda depends on, like, who I'm seeing and who I'm going with and all that sorta stuff.
It's definitely the same with art. I I I hate when I catch myself dissecting too much. Like I'll have a friend or something that goes with me to like a gallery opening or a museum or whatever, and they're amazed at this painting, and I look at it, I'm like, eh. I see what they did. They did this trick and they did that, and that's been done a million times. And like, I hate that I do that, but it's like so hard not to do that when you know what's been done before and you have some perspective as a musician. It's like, yeah, that's cool, but so and so did it 30 years ago or whatever. It's been done a zillion times. It's like
Yeah.
almost it's almost it would be nice if you could flick a switch and just like be dumb and like not experience at all and just be like, oh, it just sounds cool, and that's all it matters, you know?
Yeah, no, I definitely feel that because with a lot of newer music that's, like, coming out today and stuff, I find that, like, I don't know, I'm not too crazy about it just because a lot of it has been done before. How many chord progressions can you do, you know? So, a lot of it, I try not to be so, like, heard it before," and,
Yeah.
like, about
No.
it, like, I just try to be like, it's cool. They're doing their thing. Good for them."
Right. And ultimately, if people are digging music or art, ultimately it's a good thing. It's like it's hard to like sometimes step off the pedestal of like where you're at in your career and be like, okay, you know what? If you like to eat Twinkies and I like to eat gourmet food, like whatever, it's all good. Like it is a
Everybody's got their thing.
yeah, it's a funny topic. Plus, like, it's also interesting because you find that a lot of musicians and visual artists, for that matter, they gain and they earn like these crazy chops. But then somewhere in their career, they decide to like kind of take it back, and they're like, I can do all the tricks, but I don't
Mhm.
want to, you know?
No, definitely. I think too, especially with drums, like, just because somebody can do all these crazy tricks and chops, like you're saying, doesn't mean that they should. It doesn't mean it's always gonna fit the song and feel right.
Right. I was just talking to my friend Adam about this on the podcast like a month or so ago. He's Adam drums with Jack Johnson. And I was talking to him about like what makes like a good drummer. And we were kind of got on this topic because he's much more of like he self-described like minimalist drummer. He just kind of
Mhm.
does like minimalist fills, kind of just keeps it going. And that's like, I love so many diverse types of music. But I happen to love that genre quite a bit as well. And it's interesting. I was asking like what makes a good drummer. And I'm going to ask you too. So start to think about your answer. But like for him, it was not about like the crazy chops or fills or like, look, I'm doing like a double, kick drum, like insane, like whatever. It was more like I just want to keep the beat, do my job. It was more like it kind of felt like he was saying to me, like, here, I have a job to do and I want to do the job the best I can. I'm not trying to like impress everyone with what I can do. Where is that sort of the similar take to you? Because like being a more of a rock, more known as a rock metal drummer, a lot different than playing drums with Jack Johnson, right? Like,
Yeah, but I mean, I definitely do agree a lot with Adam that, you want to play what fits the song. Like I said before, just because you can do the chops doesn't mean that you should.
yeah,
I, I love to switch up fills and do different things, but the thing that's most important to me is that it fits in the song and that it's not just like me trying to show off.
yeah,
I think that there's a time and place for everything. And, you know, the time for crazy chops, maybe save that for your drum solo, not
right,
during the middle of the song. So,
right. I I was reading in an interview with you that you talked about how over the years in your wise age that you've gotten to that your musical influence is expanded quite a bit, which I think is normal and I think it's really healthy. And you had said like you've gotten to an appreciation of like jazz and classical and R&B and like music that you're probably not as known for. And I was wondering, as you've gotten into those other genres, how that might have influenced your drumming. I was watching a thing on YouTube, like Dave Grohl was talking to someone about his drumming and how it was like directly taken from like certain Motown songs or
mhm.
disco songs. And as he was describing it, it was, and you know what it was? It was an interview he did with Usher, and he was saying how like one of the songs he did on Nirvana's album was directly from this disco song. And as soon as you said it, Usher was like, "Holy shit, you did take that from there," you know? So I'm like
Yeah.
wondering how those other types of genres may or may not have influenced your playing, whether it's stuff that we've seen on YouTube from you, or maybe just playing in your bedroom on your studio at home.
Yeah. I've definitely, taken a lot of influence from like disco and funk. Like one of my favorite bands, Earth, Wind, and Fire.
So good.
Absolutely love them.
Yes.
And one of the songs I think I did a YouTube cover of it, Jupiter, and they kind of have this like pushed like downbeat, sort of thing. It's technically on like the of four, so like 4 E and if that makes sense,
It
not
does.
on
It makes
one.
sense to me, but can you explain it even more? Because I really love hearing people that are good at stuff talk about it. Can you tell me even like go into it as like a drum nerd?
Yeah, so with a lot of rock songs specifically, the downbeat is going to be on like one. So with this song, so it'd be like 40 and a one.
The
But
one being
this
the kick drum.
one being kick drum, yes.
Okay.
And with this Earth, Wind, and Fire song, a lot of times the downbeat was on the of four. So counting like 16th notes, like 4 E and one.
Mhm.
So that was really interesting for me because I've played just a lot of like rock is pretty straightforward when it comes to, that sort of stuff. Um, like it would always downbeat on one. But this, it was like downbeat on and getting like into the feel of it and into the groove of it, of that was so different for me. And it actually took me like a week or two to like really get it down good to where I felt comfortable like recording it and posting it. Um, so that has definitely expanded my knowledge of music and just, maybe I should try doing that more often, like kind of pushing the downbeat and, playing around with different timings and different grooves and just, doing a lot more like adding ghost notes in between all my other like snare and kick hits and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's definitely inspired me a lot with, you know, new music writing, and coming up with different and new grooves and ideas.
You know, it's crazy thinking about like music history wise. You know, you think about music up to like let's say the 40s or even 50s, and then all of a sudden it's like the culture changes, people start doing crazy ass drugs, like the society shifts around, and then it's like I think I don't know a huge amount, but I think jazz is sort of where it kind of got crazy. Like people started like smoking weed, doing heroin, all kinds of crazy ass stuff back in the jazz days.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
on the one hand, bad. Don't do heroin. Not a good idea, right? Bad. It always ends bad. On the other hand, it's like we see so many musicians and artists like push the envelope to places that may have never gotten there were it not for people that were mentally ill, doing drugs, totally whacked out of their mind, just call these crazy things. Do you feel as a musician from either your own experience or just from studying music, so you clearly know a lot about bands and music history, is mental health, drugs, struggling, depression, are these things almost necessary elements? Or do we have to have music and art martyrs in order to break boundaries?
Such an interesting question. I love that. I it is sad when you think about it that a lot of the greatest music that we've ever had has come from people who are struggling with mental health and drug use and all of that. Um, I would hate to say that it's necessary because then, that sounds like I'm encouraging people to go do drugs if you want to
Right.
write something really cool. Um, but, I definitely do think that there's an element and a feeling that will be translated through music when you are somebody who, if you struggle with depression or anxiety, that will come through the music, and I do think that a lot of people take that energy that they feel when they are depressed. Like I know I've definitely struggled with depression and anxiety. And I always try my best to channel it through music and, use that as an outlet.
Mhm.
So, and I found that times when I am very happy and I'm in an amazing place,
Yeah.
I don't always come up with my most creative stuff. So I do think that it's not necessary, but I do think that it helps when you have all of this emotion. You have such a great feelings inside of you and you can channel it, and express it through music and art.
Yeah, I think it's really common. I think especially for creative people, people that pursue creativity beyond childhood. I think it's obviously super common for people to either be have a little bit of mental uneasiness or anxiety or depression or drug use or a combination of all those things. And I definitely have experienced all those things, all the above. And it is it is a tough one because I remember when I was super depressed, you get in a place with your creativity, or at least I did, where it was like the art, like I would stand in front of my easel and just be in such a bad place. And I would have these feelings of nothing else matters except for this painting. And at the
Yeah.
exact same time, I would realize that none of this painting doesn't matter in the slightest bit also. So it's like a weird balance between this matters more than everything and put everything you have into it and live and eat and breathe and be the painting while at the same exact time being like, doesn't fucking matter anyway. Who cares? Like it's a weird.
Yeah.
Have you found that in your own experience?
Yeah, definitely. It's just like you get to a point where you start to question everything. Like, why am I doing this? Like,
Right.
does anybody else appreciate this? Like, do I even am I enjoying this right now? You know? Yeah, definitely been at those points where I'm like questioning like what's going on.
As I got myself out of it, I try to look at it. I have like a theory for myself, at least. I think it's not necessarily that those things that we talked about are necessary per se, although I think they have some help. I think it's that they put you in such a tunnel vision state where nothing else matters. Like if you're depressed, if you have anxiety, if you're on drugs, if you're in love, if you're heartbroken, you get like such complete tunnel vision that scenario or that moment that you're in is all that exists and everything else just fades away. And I think some people use those moments or those substances to sort of get in that place.
Yeah, absolutely. And they use that to then create something amazing, which is really,
Good.
it's crazy that something so dark and so depressing can create something so beautiful, like a
Like
beautiful painting, beautiful piece of music.
like over and over again too, like for hundreds or thousands of years. Like we just brought our kids to Amsterdam. We went to the Van Gogh Museum, and like
Nice.
holy shit, that guy was so messed up. Like he was
Shit.
such a mental wreck. Chopped his ear off, like depression, mental institution, and like holy hell, his paintings were freaking gorgeous.
Yeah, and it's crazy too, because I remember reading up on him. I love Van Gogh. He's like one of my
Yeah,
favorite painters.
same. Mhm.
I have a couple of his like poster, like his artwork is printed on posters, and I have that in my studio. Um, and when he was alive, nobody liked his paintings. But then once he died, everybody was like, oh, wait, this is actually kind of beautiful.
Hmm.
So it's crazy. I think about it. He had no recognition when he was alive.
Yeah, it's sad. I think about that a lot. Like whenever I see like a rock documentary or something, or if you watch any of the billion YouTube things on Kurt Cobain, for instance, it's like you realize like a lot of these rock legends or music legends that I worship, you probably worship as well. It's like had they not gotten insanely famous, they would be the biggest losers ever. Like if they had the same like lifestyle, if they had the same habits, if they had hung out with the same people, did the same drugs, had the same exact talent, but if they weren't famous, they'd be that guy you just step over on the street who's like laying in a puddle of his own piss and drooling, you know? Like, but they got famous, so all of a sudden they're like gods. It's like such a weird tightrope to walk on a path of creativity, whether you're an artist, musician, or writer, a dancer. It's like such a fine line between okay, put it all on the line, and you're either going to lose really bad or you're going to win really big.
Yeah, it is. That is really interesting that you point that out, that people would view them so much differently if they weren't famous, and keeping up that lifestyle and
And
just, yeah.
on so getting off the dark topic for a second, but sort of related. How do you find that you how do you keep ego out of it? Because on the one hand, I could imagine that you get enormous amounts of compliments and praise and things that are inflating your head. And I could also imagine, and I'm just guessing on both of these, that you probably get your share of like people shit talking you or saying weird things or whatever. How do you personally deal with both of those? Not letting your head get too big and too self, you know, whatever the word is, too built up on self and how great I am. And how do you kind of push back the people that are just the haters and people that are saying things that you don't want to hear? How do you deal with those two sides?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to staying humble and not having a raging ego, I definitely think where I live helps, because I live, in the countryside of New York. There's not much around. It's not pretentious at all where I live. So I definitely think that that keeps me, down to earth and grounded, as well as, just the way I was raised. Because my parents, they will absolutely praise me when I am doing well and doing something good, but, they'll be totally honest with me. And they've always been honest with me if I did something and you could do better. And it's not coming from a place of, they're shitting on their kid. They
Mm-hmm.
just want me to do the best that I can. So I definitely think that that has helped me a lot, having my parents keep me grounded as well,
Mm-hmm.
and being honest with me. And when it comes to people leaving like hate comments, you know, it's a random person on the internet. I don't think too much about it. Um, I, you know, definitely have grown to have pretty thick skin. I didn't always wasn't always that way. I used to be very sensitive. But yeah, just keep moving forward. They're a random person. I don't know them, they don't know me. And ultimately, that's just their opinion and everybody's got one. So,
Yeah, it's funny you answer the question starting out like geographically, like you're like, well, I live in New York, I live in the woods and all that, but it's like we also, whether we'd like to admit it or not, we also live online. Like we live staring at our phones, and we live, so we do live wherever we live, but we also probably spend more time staring at where we don't live. And it sounds like you have a good, healthy grasp on that, but a lot of people don't. And before I go there, though, I have a question, but I want to go back, rewind for a second. I was reading that at least a couple of years ago, I was reading an interview from like 21, maybe so long ago, but you had said that up until that point, at least, that you have not written or you don't usually write your own songs. Is that still the case?
no, I have been doing a lot of writing actually.
Okay.
Um, I am. actually in a new band, have a new project going on that I am super, super excited about.
Hear about it.
It's yeah, we've been working on it for about a year now. So it's definitely, and I've been also teasing it online for about a year now. So I'm sure people are probably wondering when that's finally going to come out. But, you know, spring, summer of this year is when we're hoping, we just really want to make sure that we have every, all the pieces together, the right team so that when we do release music and we do launch, we're ready to go. We're ready to do everything that we want to do. But yeah, no, I am very excited to release some original music very soon. Um,
Songs that you've written, or co-written the melodies, the rhythms, like the whole shebang.
yeah, so I not so much all like the melodies and stuff, although I do love to play bass and I have this little mini Casio keyboard that I love to fiddle on sometimes.
Oh,
Uh,
cool.
but with this project, it's mainly I just wrote all the drum tracks. That was my part. But yeah, very excited for it though.
You're not giving us anything else, huh? No band name, no release dates, no music genre. Is it what people would expect, your fans would expect from you, or is it something a little different?
Definitely what they would expect for sure.
Okay.
In terms of sound, we're definitely very inspired by Led Zeppelin, Aerosmith, Black Sabbath, in that range.
Okay.
Our mission or our goal was just to take that kind of classic rock sound, but put it through like a 2024 lens.
Mm.
So yeah, I'm very excited. Should be getting back into the studio again early March. So yeah,
Is it all female band? Is it mixed? Can you not tell us?
it is half and half. So I am working, our guitarist, Brinley Amacon, um, is also a girl. So drums and guitar are us. And then we have a male bass player and a male vocalist as well.
Okay. Cool. Exciting. Want to hear more, but it doesn't sound like you want to give us anything.
I don't want to share too much right now because we're still working on it and everything. But like I said, very, very soon we will be able to, you
All
guys
right.
will everything.
Are you guys dropping a single, an album? What's the plans as far as that goes?
Definitely, we would love to release a full album, probably like a single or two first,
Okay.
and then full album.
I know a
So,
really good artist that does album covers.
oh, really?
I do. Um, Talk to me about. I want to get back. I want to get to the topic of actually drumming, since, like I said, my twin boys are learning, and then I just have forced myself to sit in front of the kit, even though I usually play guitar. Been having a lot of fun with it. So I want to ask you some doofy drum questions for people listening that maybe are just curious and not pro drummers. Is that okay?
Of course, yeah.
Um, so I'd like to think of music, whatever instrument it is, as well as visual arts. The way I think of these things as being a language. So in my spare time, I'm trying to get fluent in Spanish, which is very slow. But I love the idea of just languages in general, whether it's music, art, or a foreign language, because I like the idea of being able to communicate and express in as many ways as you possibly can. Whatever you have in you, I'd like it to have a medium to get out. And so I'm really curious, with someone like yourself who's fluent in drums, once you get to a certain point, Brooke, does it, are you still counting in your head? Is it just feel? How do you keep the time steady? Like, I'm super new at learning drums, and for me, it's still like one and two. I'm still counting. But
Mhm.
when I play guitar, I don't feel like it's as much. Maybe I should be, but I feel like it's more feel. What's going on in your head as you're playing?
Yeah, so I definitely play mostly through feel. Like I don't do a lot of counting anymore. It really depends. If it's something that I'm working on that's new and that I haven't totally gotten down yet, I'll be counting in my head. But or if I'm doing one thing I always like to work on is a lot of improv because I am not always the best with that. So that's one thing I've been working a lot on lately is like improv. So with that, I will also be counting in my head. But once I get to a certain point and like very comfortable with playing a song, I don't really count. I just really go by feel. Um, but yeah, that's how I do it normally, a lot by
And
feel.
and doing it straight up by feel, like how do you, especially with such fast songs with so much going on, like how do you keep the timing so like steady as a drummer in general? How does that, it's just, I guess it's just practice, just happens in your head. You have a metronome in your head.
I do listen to a metronome a lot. I always practice with a metronome. Like when I am doing my like improv exercises, whatever, I'll practice to a metronome. So I think, you know, after so many years of playing to a metronome, you kind of just like you learn to be one in a way.
Yeah.
Um, so when I'm playing live, I like to play with a metronome, but that's doesn't always happen. So I will play without a click.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, it's kind of just through practice and learning and just doing it repeatedly.
So we had mentioned something to bring up, and I was going to ask you this anyway because I was really curious. Even though you're super young, in the past like 5 to 10 years, like the tools, the apps, everything has changed so
Mhm.
much. And I was like going to ask you anyway, what sort of tools, what sort of protocols, what sort of implements or whatever can you use as a new drummer? And you had mentioned that you have a really cool new partnership going on. And I wanted to know if you could tell us about that and maybe give some hints for the newer drummers out there or people curious to just start it out, like different kinds of practice protocols, different kinds of apps, tools, things like that that might help you with your journey.
Yeah, so I recently partnered with Drumeo to give everybody who follows me a 30-day free trial. And I love Drumeo. I know when I was growing up and stuff, I would watch their videos and learn, and they have so many amazing tools for beginner drummers and people who are just learning, so many amazing lessons. I one of my favorite things that they have are drumless tracks. So you could just put that on and just play to it, and it's really great for, you know, like what I mentioned before, improv. You want to get better at that. As well as playing different styles of music because they have everything from like jazz to metal to funk, like all that. So it's really, really a great program, and I'm very excited to be working and partnering with them.
Yeah, that's a super cool opportunity. I stumbled upon them just since I started playing, and it seems like they're really doing some cool stuff. I've not tried it personally, but can you, for someone listening that either is a newer drummer or just wants to try it out, how does the interface work? So if you're sitting there in front of your kit, maybe you've had a few lessons, maybe not. How is this app going to help you know, okay, I hit my snare with this, I hit my tom with that? Like, how do you know, how does it guide you through the process? Tell people.
Yeah, so they have videos of other drummers playing, and it's really great. Um, these drummers, they break it down for you and tell you exactly what you need to do. But it's also obviously it's videotape, so you could see what they're doing and you can see when they hit the snare or the tom or a crash cymbal. So they definitely walk you through it step by step, and it's very easy to follow, I find.
So I know you must have an old soul because you just said videotape. You definitely have an old soul within you somewhere. You have like an old 1960s drummer chick in you that knows about videotape. Um, so I wonder, do you share my opinion that social media is like a love-hate thing? Because I want to know your thoughts. Because for me as an artist, all I want to do is paint, to be honest. And yeah, I do love the connections I have with people. Like I've made some insane connections and opportunities. I've had collaborations. I've gotten gigs for my art. I've gotten album covers, all kinds of cool stuff from social media. But I still freaking hate it. Like if I could throw it out the window and not have to ever, like if I was like Tom Cruise level and all I could do was just paint and have someone else deal with all the other shit, I really would get rid of it, except for maybe popping in to say hi to people. You're younger. Do you like just like love it? Like my nieces are 17 and they would live on TikTok if they could. Where do you fall on that spectrum?
Yeah, I definitely fall on the it's a love-hate relationship, like you said, it's so great that you get to connect with so many people, so many different people around the world. And, there's so many opportunities that I've had that I wouldn't have had if it wasn't for social media. So I'm very grateful for where I'm at and that I do have it. But, there is the part of me too. I just love to play drums. If I could just go on tour, play some shows, play drums, do my thing, um, and that's it, I would be okay with that. I it's not that I don't like it, but it's just, there's definitely a part of it too that can get toxic in a way and like, you can get into the thing of people you start to compare yourself to other people that you see online and it's just like, well, why aren't I like them?
Are you still,
And
wait, are you still, I have to pause you. Are you still there? Because you have like several 100,000 followers. Like, are you still in that mental spot of like, why does she have 1 million and I have 300,000? Like, does that ever end?
it's not even so much like numbers like that. It's just more so of like, sometimes you see other people and they do something amazing, so crazy, like on drums, bass, like whatever. And it's like, I can't do that. Why can't I do that?
And it's like a 9-year-old or something.
Yeah. And so I definitely worked on it a lot in the way of like, everybody's got their own thing, everybody's got their own journey, and people are going to be at different levels. So instead of more being envious of like, I can't do that, like, what the hell, be more of like, wow, that person's really amazing, good for them. So, um, so yeah, to circle back to your question, social media is definitely a love hate relationship for me. I think, it's great, but definitely has its downsides as well.
Is it, we each have the perspective of our own lives, right? Like we're all living like outside, looking outside of our own eyeballs, right? So I only have my own experience. Is it different for you? Like there must be another layer to it being like a young 20 something that's attractive, that's has your skills. Like how does that, or does that play an extra layer as far as like the social pressures go? Like you mentioned comparison, we all have that, whether it's physical or skills or numbers or whatever it might be. How does that layer of things, like being a young woman, how does that layer into all the other pressures and all the other things that you have to deal with having an online presence and being who you are?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, you know, some extra pressures when it comes to, do my hair and makeup for video, putting on a cool outfit, all that sort of stuff. Um, but, it is at the end of the day, that is something that I do like to do. I like to have my hair done. I like to have my makeup done, and I like to wear cool clothes. Um, so I wouldn't say that's necessarily some pressure that other people are putting on me. Um, but it is definitely different for in a capacity. I don't honestly, I don't think about it too much in a way. Like I just do my thing and I try to, focus on myself and where I'm at and just all that sort of stuff.
That
Try
sounds
not to.
incredibly healthy. Your parents must be happy to hear that. I have a daughter who's 10, and I always worry about that. Like society being where it is, and being a young woman today's age, and just having social media where it is now. I always worry about my daughter, especially with stuff like that. She's at the age where like the pressures and the peer stuff, and like, oh, this person said that, and that girl said this, and this girl's wearing this outfit. Like that's already starting, and I'm like, oh my god, no, like please, like.
Yeah, it's definitely I remember being in school and having all that too and stuff and just like now I've kind of, obviously when you get older and stuff, you can kind of surround yourself with people who you actually like. You're not forced to be around as many people that you
Yeah.
don't like. Um, but yeah, definitely just try to kind of have the blinders on a little bit when it comes to other stuff like that and just focus on yourself and ways that you can better yourself and yeah, all that. So,
Yeah. You had mentioned a couple minutes ago saying how you'll be online scrolling through and you'll see someone doing something and you're like, oh, how did they do that? I'm wondering for you, like I know for me, I have versions of that too. I'll be flipping through and I'll see like some like 11-year-old painting something that I'm like, what? How are you doing that? Like, and but I find that there's a couple categories for me, and it's probably the same for you. Like, there's a category I'll be scrolling through, and someone has like the technical skills of they're painting something that's so intricate and crazy and insane, and but then it's like, but I wouldn't necessarily want to hang that up in my house. And then there's people that have like don't have the chops, but they've done something so incredibly creative that maybe is not as elaborate. And I find that I have several channels of like comparison slash jealousy slash being impressed by, and they don't usually cross over. Either it's like people that have these insane chops on guitar, drums, painting, or it's people that are just have broken it down to whatever is necessary and are doing something so incredibly cool and unique. And I find myself like, wow, I want to do both. I want to be the guy that could do this. I want to be the guy that could be that, do that. Like, how do you have versions of that for yourself, Brooke?
Yeah, definitely. Back to the thing of like, you sometimes you do compare yourself to other people online, and um sometimes I'll just, if I see something, I'm like, oh, I don't know if like I could do that, like, and I get like a little bit like a little upset. Not even so much jealous, but just like I definitely get down on myself and all that. But I'll honestly, like, when I have time, I'll sit behind the kit and then I'll try to learn what they did, you
Mhm.
know. And if I get it, cool, then give myself a little pat on the back. And if I don't get it, it's fine, not there's so many different styles of drummers and musicians, and just because somebody else can do something doesn't that you can't do doesn't mean that you're a shitty musician, you know.
Right.
Um, and I think that that's definitely one thing that we as artists and creatives need to understand, that we all have our own niche, and we need to focus on what makes us unique and maybe focus on things that other people will look at and be like, "Oh, I can't do that," and make that your thing and focus on you.
Mm. You had mentioned that you do have a love of putting on cool outfits and the whole like aesthetic to it. I totally appreciate, respect that. And it brings up a question. Tell us about rockangelcloset.com.
Yeah, so that is a clothing, it's like a clothing rental service. So you can sign up and you get sent two pieces each month, and you can wear them as much as you like and then send them back when you're done. Um, so yeah, it's a way to try on so many different styles of clothing and new outfit ideas and new pieces, but you don't have to commit to them. And it's a little bit easier on the wallet than having to buy all these individual pieces and all that sort of stuff.
Is your company, you started it? Do you have partners? What's going on behind the scenes?
I partnered with a company to
Okay.
do that, and they kind of handle all the like the business side of it, and I just do the promoting for it.
So cool. I love that you are, it seems like you are really aware of the need to that expression like hit while the frying pan is hot. Like you seem really aware of seizing opportunities, seizing the right opportunities and kind of running with it. And that takes a certain entrepreneurial spirit that I think most creative people tell me, at least, that they don't necessarily have. Like I get a lot of people, artists, that will ask me as many questions about the business side as they do the art side. And I think that's a compliment. And I definitely am kind of throwing that to you as a compliment. But I'm curious what the reality looks like for you. I know for me, I get a lot of messages from other artists saying, "Oh, I wish I can be a professional painter. I wish I can do some of the things you're doing. I've always wanted to draw, paint, whatever it might be." And I get that. But then there's also the reality of like, well, you're not seeing what my like day to day is like. Like you're not seeing me sit in front of my computer. You're not seeing me edit videos. You're not seeing me deal with emails and contracts and deadlines and all the stuff that most people that DM me probably don't want to actually deal with. And I hope that I get someday to the point where I don't have to deal with all that stuff. And we kind of touched upon that earlier. Do you have a team? What does your day to day look like? How much of it is actually just being Brooke drumming, and how much of it is being Brooke the businesswoman?
Yeah, so I actually don't have a team. I do everything myself. I handle all my emails and all that sort of stuff on my own. But day to day is pretty, I think, what most people would expect it to be. Wake up in the morning, uh, answer whatever emails I have, and then I'll go about planning what I need to have done and what I need to get done and content ideas and all that sort of stuff. Um, so I'll spend the morning doing that, and then I will play and work on whatever I need to, like drums and music and all that sort of stuff in the afternoon. And normally I will save writing and being like creative and stuff for nighttime. I don't know what it is, but something about like night is like more relaxing. So you just take the time to be creative and write new things. So that's pretty much my day to day. And then when I do have to record, I'll probably record like afternoon, nighttime.
What is recording look like for you? What does your process look like? Are you like recording like a scratch track into like Apple, voice memos? Are you like using Logic Pro? Like, what are you using to get your ideas? You'll be sitting there in the shower, you come up with an idea, then what?
So if it's just an idea for writing or just a groove that I just need to get it recorded immediately, I just use the voice memo thing on my phone, voice notes. But for videos, I use Pro Tools. I have my whole kit mic'd, and that goes through my Behringer mixer. Um, and then I use a GoPro to film. And then when I'm done, I take the audio and I export it to, I use Final Cut Pro. And then I export the video there and I put everything together and edit it in Final Cut.
So, being honest here, how much of your day is spent recording, video editing, mixing, social media, answering comments compared to actually playing?
Um, I would say it's a good half and half. So if I spend 3 hours playing and getting a video together, I'll spend maybe the next 3 hours filming, recording, putting it together, and responding to comments and all that sort of stuff. So
Yeah, it
it's
sounds
a
about
1-to-1 ratio, I would say.
such a I think to some of the bands that we both like I think of like Zeppelin in their heyday, or I think of like Black Sabbath or Nirvana, and I am so glad that they existed when they did, because I would hate to see them spending all the time on mixing videos, and like I would hate to see like Robert Plant in 1969 on TikTok, like, or like having Kurt Cobain doing like a live chat or something. It just seems wrong. It's such a weird like time we live in. Like it's almost like we're almost like robbed of like the naive existence of purity in that way. You know what I mean? Like there's something so magical about that. At least in my head. Maybe back if you lived back then, maybe it was like, it wasn't anything. But for me, it seems like such a magical time.
Yeah, and it's crazy because I'm sure people from back then would look at us now with all of our phones and stuff and be like, "Wow, it's a magical time."
Right, right,
So it's like, in a way, we almost envy each other, those 2 time periods. Because I know I would be totally fine if I lived in the '70s and had no phone and just
right.
went about life, no social media or anything. I would be totally fine with that. So it's definitely interesting to think about.
A couple more questions if you have the time. I just have a few more that I would love to ask you. Um, if you could sort of wave a magic wand, Brooke, and your career over the next week could turn into something else, or maybe another version of what you're doing, would you be like a full-time, super mega famous rock drummer touring the world and people like, oh my God, Brooke, scream going crazy? Or would it look like something different? What is that like crazy vision, ultimate vision in your head? If you, I don't know if you have a vision board or if you're spiritual, but like, what does that look like for you? And how often and how specifically do you think about it?
I would definitely I wanna be, you know, touring the world, playing drums, playing music. That's my ultimate goal, and that is my dream, and I honestly, I think about it like every day while I'm playing drums. And while I'm playing, I'm just like thinking like, all right, like what do I have to do next to, get closer to my goal, get closer to my dream. So it's yeah, that's definitely I it wouldn't be too much different if I could change my career, you know? I mean, not that I'm like touring the world right now, but I'm going for the same direction, you know? I'm working towards what I want right now.
Okay. So you have toured before, so you sort of have a taste of what that's like.
Mhm.
What are so and I've been in enough backstage areas to kind of get a sense of the different spectrum of where it could go. I've seen both ends of the spectrum of like super chill and everyone just literally just BSing, and I've seen people do some crazy ass shit. What are some moments that you could share with us that maybe are some pinch me moments, things of like, is this really happening? Like maybe it was your first tours, maybe it was some crazy people you met. What have been some like just moments of like, whoa, this is insane. This is happening. Oh my God.
Yeah, I would definitely say one of the biggest pinch me moments was it was my first major tour and it was an arena tour.
Okay.
And just, first show of the tour, walking out and seeing like how big the arena is and just like doing sound check there as well. Um, it was just absolutely insane and just a feeling like no other, nothing else would be able to replace that feeling and how I felt then. So definitely one of the biggest ones though, for sure.
I see you have sort of like a shrine behind you. Um,
Yes.
I could see maybe four or five of them. Are any of the pictures behind you, are these like your favorite musicians or are they just cool photos? Like, tell me about I guess some of your favorite musicians, if whether they include people behind you or not. I'm really curious from your perspective, some of the more influential musicians in your life, but also I want you to go deeper if you don't mind. Like, why? Give me the why behind it. Because I could tell you a list of musicians that are my favorites, but I don't think I could answer as deeply as you could. Like, can you go into that for me, Brooke?
Yeah, of course. So behind me, I have quite a few of my inspirations. Got John Bonham up here, classic.
Yep.
This is Stevie Nicks.
Janice? Oh, it's Stevie Nicks. It looks almost like Janice with the hat on.
Yeah, so and then Elvis, and both of these photos are from this artist. I believe his name is Indian Giver, and what he does is he takes photos of old photos of people and he photoshops like tattoos on them, like full sleeves.
Oh, cool.
So the one Stevie Nicks with sleeves, and then Elvis with sleeves. And then I have Amy Winehouse here. And then up here, you can only see his feet, but this is Jimi Hendrix. So some of my all-time favorite artists, and I think it's really great to, decorate. This is my studio that I'm sitting in right now, just like the corner of it. And I think it's just really great to decorate it with people who influence you and have that around you while you are, trying to be creative and stuff. But to answer your question on people who I really love and who influenced me a lot and why, um, obviously got to go with my number one, John Bonham.
Step on it.
Uh, well, I just, first time I think the first song I ever heard from them was Good Times, Bad Times. And that song just, hearing the drums and how prominent they were, but like still, he managed to do a lot of cool shit in Led Zeppelin songs, but I don't ever feel like he overplayed, you know? And that's something that I have always really loved about him and inspired, and that has always inspired me, to, you know, be be a drummer and drum and just make things interesting, but still fit the song. Kind of like what we talked about before.
Yeah.
Uh, so that's one of the reasons why I've just always loved him and just the energy that he has behind the kit as well. It was unlike anybody at that time, for me.
I mean, his
Uh,
kit, huge. Like, what a
which is
massive. kit he had.
Yeah, the gong behind him and everything too.
Right? I mean, so it's like so like cinematic. It was just like bong, like yeah.
Yeah. No, added so much to like the live shows and stuff. Whole different element.
It's crazy to hear you describe him as not overplaying, and he didn't. But it's crazy because when you hear his parts, he was playing like insane complex stuff, and yet somehow he didn't overshadow like Robert or Jimmy. And it's like, but how does it doesn't make sense to me when you if you see his part on paper and not hear everyone else, you'd be like, how does that not take over everyone?
Yeah, no, you just gotta Led Zeppelin's one of the bands you just gotta experience it. You just gotta listen to it. And, unfortunately, I never got to see them live. But one thing I really love to do is listen to their live album, How the West Was Won. Like, I put that on all the time and just listen to it. It's one of my favorites.
What do you? I got to pause you for a second because I'm a gigantic Led Zeppelin fan. Also, I saw Page and Plant back in the day, and I saw Robert Plant like at his tour 2 years ago or something. Just amazing. Um, that was the closest I came to like crying at a concert when I saw like Jimmy
Oh,
Page. I was like, oh my god. Um, I don't know what it is about them. I try to figure it out all the time. There's certain bands that they make this like evergreen music that never expires. And and yet I also love bands that are much closer to like the poppy side of things as well. Like I love all kinds of music, but it's weird how in my head I can like, let's say I like a Blink 180 one, I'm sorry, Blink 182 song, and I like it, let's say on a scale from 1 to 10, I like it like, let's say 8.5 or 9. Zeppelin is always 10, but it's like not that much difference, but there's just something about the Beatles, the Doors, Jimi Hendrix, there's something about it that, and I don't know what it is that makes them so timeless that you never get sick of it.
yeah. That's really interesting because, everybody there's a lot of kids that I know, like, my age, and they love Led Zeppelin too, and, you know, just I've yet to meet somebody who doesn't like Led Zeppelin, and, like what you mentioned, like, the Beatles and the Doors and all of that. It's definitely I I don't know how they managed to do all the make it timeless. I guess certain things just never go out of style.
Have you felt that feeling when you're writing a drum part? Have you written a drum part yet that you feel has that amount of soul to it that like that came out of you so magically and so effortlessly that you're like, I don't know where that came from, but it was beyond me and it's just amazing. Like, have you had a lot of those moments?
I I wouldn't say I've had a lot of them, but I've had a handful. Um,
Best feeling ever, right?
oh, it is the best feeling for sure. I'll be sitting down like writing for tracks for my new project or just even to jamming along to drumless tracks, and I'm like giving myself a little pat on the back. I was like, that came out pretty smooth, you know.
I love that feeling when it comes out of you and you know it's good, but it almost feels like you don't deserve any of the credit.
Yeah, yeah,
You're like, I don't know where that came. It wasn't me. I may have been holding the sticks or the paintbrush or something, but like I don't know what that was, but it was pretty sick and it wasn't me. Like
yeah. It's almost just like you just like blacked out and your body just knew what to do and just yeah.
I would imagine that bands like we mentioned must have found a way to just more consistently do that because I think a lot of people when they see you play or they see a musician or an artist do their thing, that people probably assume it's like all the time that you're in that zone or that pocket, but it's not all the time. I feel like you get like the universe gives you a little glimpse of like, all right, here's a couple minutes of like just totally channeling it from your muse, and then it gets sucked away, and then for the rest of the next half hour, you're chasing it. You're like, come back, get back here.
Yeah, the worst though too is when it's like you don't feel that feeling for like a week or two.
Right.
And you're trying to, find inspiration in literally like whatever you can
Yeah.
to get that feeling back. That's something I've always struggled with was just like,
Mhm.
almost feeling burnt out in a way and like creativity, almost like a drought.
Yeah.
Um,
Maybe that's
but
where drugs come in. Maybe that's kind of where people are like, all right, I need that back again. I lost it. I experienced that where I'm like, all right, I don't know, I don't know if you experience this, if you get sick of drums, but there's times when I paint so intensely and then I don't want to even look at my paintbrushes for like a long time. And I force myself to because it's sort of my job. But there's times when I'm like, I just don't want to do that. I need a break. I'm like burnt out. I'm over it. I want to do something else. I'm going to pick up my guitar instead. You know what I mean? I'm going to go skateboard, but I don't want to touch my paintbrushes. Do you have that?
Yeah, I definitely have felt that before. And, it's definitely hard because, like you mentioned, it is kind of your job. You have to do it. Um, so just finding a way to get past that and, whether it is, like you said, like go skateboarding, do something else, like, and kind of reset and refresh. Um, but yeah, definitely experienced that a lot.
Do you have any rituals? Are you comfortable talking about whether or not you partake in like you'll have a drink or you'll take a hit of something or like I don't know if you're comfortable about talking about that or if that is part of your experience, but like what is your sort of ritual when you're like need or really or thriving you're I'm sorry, craving getting in that zone and you can't get there? Like is there something that you do take whatever that you're like, okay, here I am. Woo.
Yeah. I do smoke occasionally, weed. Not too much though, because I hate relying on something to be creative, you know? And also too, sometimes it just knocks me on my ass, and I don't end up doing anything, you know? Um, but I
Sometimes
do.
it is you that you're like this ultimate genius, and the next day you like listen to your scratch track and you're like, what?
Oh, yeah. That's happened to me a lot. It's like while I'm playing it, or even too, it'll be like minutes later. I'll be playing it. I'm like, this is great. I'm feeling great. And then I record on my phone and I listen back to it and I'm like, that was not great. I don't know what the hell I was thinking.
Right, totally. I like
Really.
to my sketchbook. I'll like I'll smoke or something and I'll draw the sketch. I'm like, all right, I got to write this idea down because it's so amazing. And then like next day I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. Like, I wonder if
Yeah.
you're just not able to maybe at the time that you're looking or listening to it, maybe if you're not in the same exact mindset, the notes you took or the whatever you did, it's just not hitting the same way. Maybe it actually is magical, but you're just kind of forgetting the place you were at. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be something like that too. If it's just, gotta take that vision and make it better and, like alter it in a way where you actually like it sober as well.
Yeah.
So,
Right. I definitely don't like to rely on anything either, but then it's like sometimes I'll like take off a lot of time and I'm like, you know what? I don't need that. I should be just clear headed, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. I'll just take a quick hit. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, I'm a genius. It's like unlocks a portal and you're like, whoa.
yeah. Yeah, no, it can definitely help with that and writing and just, especially too, sometimes if I found one of my creativity blocks is I'll start thinking about things too much,
Mm,
and overthinking. And really put that pressure on myself to come up with the most insane fill or groove ever. But sometimes taking a hit of something just kind of you stop thinking so much. You don't think as much about it and you just go with it and do it.
yeah. Um, you were
Oh,
you were saying before, like your new project is sort of influenced by some of the other bands. How do you do that without directly taking stuff from those bands? Like, how do you do it? How are you doing it in your new project? How are you being influenced by these other bands without being an imitation of another band?
yeah. I mean, I think, you know, it's really that's a great question. For us, like, it's hard for me to put into words. That's what I'm struggling with right now. But just really, like taking influence, but also kind of following along with like what you're feeling at that moment right then too. Like, and I think there's different ways like you can break it up. Like as much as I love Led Zeppelin, but then I love bands like Tool that have crazy breakdowns and different time signatures. So if you take like a more 70s sounding riff, but then you put it in like a weird time signature, you're not copying. Exactly. You know, you're making it your own and pulling from multiple influences. You know, I guess that's the best thing I can say is just, you know, you're not just pulling from one specific band. You pull from, you know, many different bands. Like you mentioned Poppy before too. I love Poppy and like how crazy go from different crazy parts and stuff, you know, and just yeah, I'd say that's the main thing. Just pulling from different influences and not just pulling from one band or artist.
Pulling from, so sort of, I know you don't want to, it's hard to describe in words, but can you go one layer deeper, even if it doesn't end up anywhere? Can you really unwrap whatever is in your brain and when you think of these topics? Because I just started talking to you today, but I get the feeling that you think about these things very deeply. Is that's the vibe I get. The vibe I get from Brooke is like you take your music very seriously and you really look at things a few layers deeper than a lot of other musicians. If that assumption is correct, can you go another layer deeper when answering that question?
Yeah. So I guess alongside from pulling influence, like I said before, um, you know, and I've talked about this a lot already, but you know, translating how I'm feeling in that moment and putting it into music. So I guess that's a way that you can pull influence from somebody, but then not copy them, because there's a good chance that what you're feeling in that moment is going to be different than what the other person was feeling in that moment when they wrote that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I guess with my main thing when I'm writing and just putting things together is I focus a lot on feeling. I feel like I talk about that a lot, but that's just where it all comes from.
That's a good thing, right? Don't you think? Like, where else
Yeah.
would you, if not feeling, what else is left? Just theory or
Yeah.
or overanalyzing. I feel like feeling is the thing that should be talked about the most.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, like I said, a lot from obviously taking influence of like, I really love the way that, I don't know, Danny Carey did this fill or this tom groove. So I'm also gonna write a tom groove, but I'm gonna put my own spin and feel on it and make it my own. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's kind of how
Do
I
you
go
ever
about it.
bring do you ever bring in other types of percussion? Like, do you ever mm, change your kit up in ways that are just unorthodox? Like, not only push the sound and not only push the timing and the other rhythms and all that kind of stuff, but do you ever push the actual kit itself? Like, I have no idea. Bring in an empty protein powder container from your kitchen and start banging on it. I have no idea. Is there some version of where you're like, let's just try something totally freaking weird?
Yeah, I mean, I typically stick to my same kit setup of like, you know, the John Bonham one up, two down kind of situation. But recently I added a octobon, which is like you'll see in my videos, it's like the really long, like clear drum. I love adding little like percussion things like that. One thing too I've actually been working on is I have a glockenspiel from when I played percussion in school. So I've been kind of wanting to like set that up by my side of my kit, almost like how Neil Peart did.
Uh,
Um, and you know, I'll bring in the bongos occasionally when needed.
all right.
Um, but yeah, for other percussion, that's normally
Okay.
what I.
Thank you so much. I mean, it was so cool to talk to you. I think your skills are amazing. I'm completely one of those people that are envious when I see you play, and but it's inspiring.
I had a great time. Thank you so much for having me.
Right on. Why don't you drop all your social media accounts and all that good stuff?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at rockangel underscore. Facebook is Brookesy. YouTube is Brookesy as well. TikTok is rockangel underscore.